You shot him. A man.
You need glasses. It was a walker.
Hey, mister, what kind of wound?
Don't you get bit. Bites kill you.
It's day 194 since Wildfire was declared, and 63 days since the disease abruptly went global.
Most of that brain is dark.
Dark, lifeless, dead.
You the new sheriff? Come riding in to clean up the town?
Wasn't my intention. All I am anymore is a man looking for his wife and son.
Why are you here? What do you want?
A chance.
There were no doctors there. It was just me. He was hooked up to machines, and I did not know what to do.
You said come locked and loaded? Okay, then we're here. We don't know what it's like out there.
You keep your boy close.
There's too many of those things.
No!
A week from now, I'll start turning mine on. A few minutes every day at dawn. You get up there, that's how you find me.
9 years ago, I clicked on a series that I wanted to watch on Netflix, and I had no idea what I was about to get into.
You will not be able to talk about the history of television without talking about AMC's The Walking Dead.
At first, I thought I was going into a show that was just going to be about zombies, and I was totally wrong.
You know, it's funny because I remember when I was trying to tell my husband I wanted to watch this show, and he was like, I don't want to watch this thing about zombies. But I can imagine when you get these scripts and you're like, really? Like, how is this going to work? And then it actually really, really worked.
I think the important thing is it's not about zombies.
That's true.
You know what, that's the brilliance of the genre, is that the notion of this post-apocalyptic world where the dead are walking is just an excuse to heighten the drama and do an exploration of what it means to be human.
The story explores psychology,
Come on.
sociology,
This is a young man's life, and it is worth more than a 5-minute conversation. Is this what it's come to? We kill someone because we can't decide what else to do with them.
and even politics.
How much this place protects and cares for all its citizens.
Bullshit.
Sir, that's enough. Does anyone here really believe the Commonwealth cares for all its citizens?
This story plays out like a character drama where the zombie apocalypse is just a backdrop. First off, if you're watching this video and haven't watched The Walking Dead, go watch The Walking Dead and then come back because I'm going to be dropping a lot of spoilers in this video. I think one of the most interesting things about this show and this franchise is the positive atmosphere that was created across the fan community. Long before I even watched the show, I could tell that the show brought people together and forged these friendships just from conversation. And I knew that the show had this massive worldwide fan base. It wasn't until I got further down the line that I knew how much it had really changed people's lives. I've heard stories of people feeling like they were finally comfortable to come out because of the show, and that it had to do with the inclusiveness and the open-mindedness from a number of main characters in the story, and also just the love of the fan community. For me, it taught me to look into the world for what it really is unfiltered and to accept what is demonstrable and what isn't. But this show has also taught me to consider that there is always room for some light around the corner, no matter how dreadful things may seem.
We will fight, and we will bleed. Yet I smile. We shall face men. Some cornered into their roles by circumstance. Some desperate murderers thrilled by blood. We shall end them all. As is our charge this day, as is our sorrow. And yet I smile.
That light around the corner always comes from a creation. That's what I love about being in a creative field in general, is that total freedom. I get to create that light. Ezekiel taught me that.
Darkness is heavy. Some of us carry more than others because we're strong enough to hold the weight. But we make the light.
Going way back, my Walking Dead fan journey started when I was in middle school and had heard that one of my friends was a big fan of The Walking Dead. Within the next few months, everybody else was watching it and talking about it, and I was the only one who hadn't watched it yet. It was when I was in the 7th grade that a friend of mine kept encouraging me to watch it and telling me all about the characters, and I noticed how he was so excited about it, and eventually I was convinced and decided, you know what, I'll give this a shot. And I watched 2 episodes or so, and I liked it, but to be completely honest, I kind of forgot about it for a few weeks. That was until one night when I was in a car ride back home from my beach house, and it was a 2-hour car ride. I spent the first hour in the back seat listening to music or whatever, until suddenly I remembered that I was in the middle of watching The Walking Dead. This is where it really started for me, and this is where I really started to get hooked. I picked up my phone, opened the Netflix app, and continued on to episode 3. I even finished the first season within the following afternoon, and from that point on, I had just continued to binge it. At the time, Netflix only had the first 3 seasons, season 4 had just ended, and everybody else was waiting for it to show up on Netflix. But I was so invested that I rented the 4th season on iTunes. I was hooked. Then came the wait for season 5, and that wait was probably the most insane around the world. The first episode of season 5 was, I believe, the peak in ratings for The Walking Dead on cable. I mean, this is when everybody was watching the show. I mean, it was insane. And ever since I started watching, I haven't turned off the screen. 7 years later, and the show was on its 11th and final season, and the ending was big. It was just really special. It did open a lot of doors for the spin-off shows to continue the franchise, but it gave itself a conclusion as well. We got Dead City afterwards that just wrapped up its first season, and that was fantastic. We're in the middle of the first season of Daryl Dixon, and that's really good so far. And then there's The Ones Who Live coming next year. But overall, the original show was the classic Walking Dead show, and I must add how moved I was by the music. The music really created this world and gave it a sound to explore and develop across all 11 seasons. The music is scored by a fantastic composer who goes by the name of Bear McCreary. He scored the entire show from the very beginning, but another notable composer for the series is Sam Ewing. Sam Ewing had worked in the music department for the show since season 5 as additional music, but had joined Bear McCreary as co-composer for the final 2 seasons. Also, I might as well add that Sam Ewing went to Berklee College of Music, which is also where I went. What Bear McCreary and Sam Ewing have done to this story to bring it to life is incredible and perfectly fitting for the show in my opinion. Now, if you haven't heard the iconic main title theme of The Walking Dead, here it is. So there's 2 fields of thought when talking about the music of the first season of the show. In one corner, you have a chamber string orchestra, and these are the moments where the show feels more like a character drama. In another corner, you have a bluegrass band, and this occurs when you have the action-heavy scenes that usually have to do with the zombies. Even when there isn't any action, some instruments from this ensemble sometimes represent the mystery of the show and create an ominous sound when something just isn't right. Having a bluegrass band first off comments on the location of the show, which is Georgia, but also really brings out the adventure aspects of the show as well. And it's different from the music you hear in zombie stories of the past.
I think that the thing that always drew me to this story, and the reason I was a fan of the comics, is because it's a character drama that just happens to be set in the zombie apocalypse. And I think even from our earliest meetings, we were talking a lot about the character arcs and not so much about obvious horror cliches and the scares. And I think what you're going to hear is that I'm scoring it like a drama, but there are some times when you have to do the obvious thing every once in a while.
But you do it in a not obvious way.
Exactly.
And that's the composers I really love hearing or working with, are the ones who can do that. Give the scene what it needs, but not make it sound like every other minor chord when the zombie face pops out.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen people online talking about what they think the music's going to be, and everyone's like, I think it should be this, and I should do this, and I just go, not going to do that, not going to do that, not going to do that. It's just like a checklist. I think you guys are going to really dig what we're coming up with. It's going to be a really beautiful sound, and not at all the kind of sounds you've heard associated with zombie stories in the past. So you guys will enjoy it.
One of the greatest resources for the Walking Dead score early on is the electric banjo. The electric banjo is hugely important for the bluegrass elements of the show.
In order to kind of find the sound, I remember having to talk to him about his mindset. I sat him down and I said, Steve, close your eyes and picture something for me. You are the banjo player in a really happening bluegrass band in Atlanta. And every Saturday night you play, and you're one of the best guys in town, and you've just been playing your whole life, and this is what you do. And then what happens? You get bit by a zombie. And unfortunately, you wake up as the living dead, and you don't have any memory of who you were. You're not even the same person, but your muscles still remember. You still remember how to play those banjo licks. What would that sound like? What would it sound like if you were a zombie banjo player? I remember Steve kind of looked at me, and he picked up the banjo, and he starts playing. And immediately, that was it. The fun thing about it is, it doesn't even sound like a banjo. I think most people wouldn't even connect that it is a bluegrass instrument, but it is, and it's a great, unique sound. Other bluegrass instruments that you're going to hear in The Walking Dead include the dulcimer and several auto harps, which have been detuned to the point of being almost non-musical. Percussionist Jonathan Ortega actually plays them almost like a percussion instrument. They have almost no discernible pitch. They just sound like heavy, scraping, broken instruments. The instrumentation of the Walking Dead main title is very representative of what the instrumentation for the whole score would later become. It has a very small, intimate chamber orchestra of only strings. This was kind of harkening back to the classic early days of the genre with composers like Bernard Herrmann doing Psycho, and guys like Ennio Morricone and Elmer Bernstein, and a lot of the classic early films had very small ensembles, and it was a really intimate and interesting sound that I wanted to reference with The Walking Dead. The visuals of the show feel evocative in the same way. Frank has chosen to shoot the series on Super 16, which gives it this classic kind of 70s gritty look. It doesn't look digital, it looks very kind of organic. And so for that reason, I wanted to avoid a lot of the very synthesized sounds that have come to embody contemporary horror scoring.
The Walking Dead is a show that feels so desolate and intimate. Early on, we see a small group of characters connecting with one another, and as soon as the story begins, the only people that we see right in the first scene are Rick and the zombie little girl. So because of that, the smaller number of characters calls for the smaller number of instruments used in the score. If you were to take a high-budget film score, they tend to have around 100 people performing in the orchestra. But with The Walking Dead, it's only 10 players total, and that's not just a budget thing, that's a creative decision. Now that I've talked about the instrumentation, let's go episode by episode and talk about the different themes and musical moments in each episode. Days Gone By is the very first episode of The Walking Dead, and it's a perfect introduction to the apocalypse and to the character of Rick Grimes. We see Rick get shot and wake up from the coma to the end of the world. He's helped by Morgan and Dwayne, and he makes his way into the city. The episode ends with Rick stuck in the tank where he hears Glenn's voice on the radio. The title Days Gone By mainly represents the time passage between Rick getting shot and waking up from the coma. But the by in Days Gone By is actually spelled B-Y-E. Because of this, Days Gone By also represents goodbye to the old world as the apocalypse begins. This episode title was actually taken directly from the title of the first volume of the Walking Dead graphic novel series, where the same events occur. This episode reflects the introduction to this world perfectly, and we see the world through Rick's eyes as he discovers the horrors surrounding him. The pilot episode is one of my favorites throughout the entire series, and it perfectly sets up everything else that happens in the show. The writing, acting, and music in this episode are unforgettable and represent what the show is really all about. Now switching gears, when we're talking about film music, we have what's called leitmotifs. These are the musical cells that get explored and developed over the course of a movie or a series, and the important thing about them is that they're meant to represent something greater within the story. An important leitmotif is, of course, the theme for The Walking Dead. It's played by a chamber orchestra of only strings, and they play this ostinato, which also has a tremolo effect. It's really just an earworm that plays over and over again, most clearly heard in the main title itself.
So the first thing you are going to hear in the main title is this tremolo string line. It's a tremolo repetitive figure in the string orchestra that's very agitated and very aggressive and energetic. And it starts off soft and gets louder and louder, and it's this simple figure that is basically the theme of The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead doesn't have a big, catchy, melodic theme. It just has this little burrowing earworm that I wanted to get stuck in the back of your minds because you hear it over and over and over again during the main title.
This main title was actually written initially for a scene before it became the main title, and you can actually still hear it in the score. This theme is meant to express terror and fear over this new world that the characters are living in and the scary situations that they get themselves into. Aside from the main title, there are also a few other leitmotifs. Some of them last over the course of the series or a few seasons, and some are meant to just represent something in a singular episode. One of my favorites is known as Rick's Despair. It's played on chamber strings that swell these chords over a pedal note on a synth pad. It's also in a major key, so it kind of mixes apples with oranges. In film music, composers sometimes take a sad scene and put the music in a major key to really tug at our heartstrings in a complicated way. If anything, it would be less emotional if it was in a minor key, but it does the opposite. It tugs at our heartstrings. This theme only plays once in the first season, so I don't want to talk about it too much just yet, but I think the title of the theme being Rick's Despair already tells us a lot of information about it. It evokes hopelessness. A character like Rick Grimes always resorts to hope, and that's what gets you. Someone as hopeful as Rick can have these moments of grief, and that's what makes you tear up in a story like this. It's also used as a theme for the Grimes family, and further into the series it occurs in sad scenes that usually have to do with them, and you'll hear it more down the road. Another important leitmotif is referred to as the Mercy of Living. It's played mostly on just a synth pad, and most of it represents the same three chords: B minor, A major, and E major. It's simple and ambiguous sounding and represents a lot of things. It sounds ambiguous because it's meant to leave you, the viewer, to decide what you're supposed to be feeling. It sounds both hopefulness and hopelessness, and it plays during the scenes where the characters are feeling empathy towards someone.
I'm sorry this happened to you.
In the case of Season 1, Rick is feeling empathy for the person that turned into the bicycle walker, and Morgan is feeling empathy towards his dead wife, whom he regrets failing to protect. It's yet another theme to remind us of how realistic these characters are, and part of what gripped me to the show in the first place. I consider myself an empathetic person, and I care about people and enjoy connecting with people, and this story taught me more about how important that is. This theme gets me teary-eyed when I listen to it, and this scene always makes me emotional whenever I watch it.
More like a proposal. Atlanta's just down the road a ways. Safe there.
There's one instrument that doesn't really appear much in the Walking Dead score, and that's the clarinet. I may be wrong about this, but I only remember hearing a clarinet total of 2 times in the show. The clarinet is a very sweet-sounding instrument, so it's only natural that a sweet sound doesn't appear a lot in a zombie apocalypse story. But it's very refreshing both times that it does appear in the score. The first time is when Rick makes friends with the horse that he ends up taking into the city. And the second clarinet moment is much later, so obviously I won't talk about it until a later video. Aside from the score, they throw in songs to represent certain moments, and there's usually a lot of great song choices. The first song that they picked in the scene is when Glenn reaches Rick on the radio while he's stuck in the tank. The song that plays is Space Junk by Wang Chung.
Drifting on the spaceway by the Beat Producer town, mapping out constellations of the place I know so well. Sifting through the system for the piece that knows my name. Endlessly I list them in the master game. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my only world.
The important lyrics to the song are as follows.
It's full of space junk, but your words are coming through. I'm riding on space junk, and it's bringing me to you.
The song in this scene is about Rick and Glenn finding him in his most desperate moments where he has a close call to death. Despite all odds and the state of the world, he's saved at the very last second. And stylistically, it's sort of an uplifting contrast overall to the vibe of the show. It's very upbeat sounding, but the story creates a dark and desolate world that we see Rick experiencing for the first time, so it makes the story much more interesting to have that contrast. In the scene, Rick is drifting through the space junk where zombies have become the ruins of the world, and now he's surrounded. But despite all odds, he's saved and actually manages to find someone. Usually the end credits music in The Walking Dead is just the Walking Dead theme, but for all of Season 1, it's not. The first episode, Days Gone By, actually just continues Space Junk, and that becomes the credits music.
bringing me to you. Yeah. It's bringing me.
We need more guts.
Guts is the second episode of the show, and what happens is that Rick meets Glenn and the rest of the group in the city, and they have to make an escape by covering themselves in walker guts. The title Guts has both a literal and a metaphorical meaning to it. The most obvious one is that the group literally has to put guts on themselves as a disguise as they walk through the herd. Another meaning behind the title is that certain characters have guts. Glenn had the guts to stick his neck out for Rick, Rick had the guts to confront Merle, and Rick also had the guts to help the group out of the department store. I personally think this is another classic episode here, being only the second one, and even though I personally like the first one better, this one shows more zombie action and makes the story more gripping. Episode 2 has a theme that relates to the action sequences of Rick and the group escaping Atlanta and is referred to as Glenn's Wheels. It includes more of the bluegrass element since it's very action heavy, and that includes the electric banjo and scraping of an auto harp. This theme is also in a Phrygian key, which makes it sound more ethnic and pretty cool.
A Phrygian scale is basically a minor scale, but it has a flat second instead of a major second. So in the case of Glenn's Wheels, it's in the key of B Phrygian, so the scale sounds like this.
The theme Glenn's Wheels only occurs in one episode, and although it doesn't play often in the show, it's also from one of the most memorable episodes of the show. The first time it plays is when Glenn leads Rick to safety after he was in the tank. The second time is after the rain washes off all their guts and they have to run away to use the car to distract the herd. The next moment I want to talk about is titled Rainfall, and it's actually in this moment here.
Oh man.
You can hear a constant downward glissando on the strings, and it sounds as if molasses is spilling. It's kind of like a musical personification of the falling of rain. The next song used in the first season is I'm a Man by Black Strobe. I think the song is really just about Glenn growing up and taking some of the hardcore responsibilities for the group. The most important lyric is the title of the song itself, I'm a Man. Musically, I think it's just another stylistic choice that is uplifting and makes Glenn feel like a badass as he's escaping from the zombies in a badass looking car. By the way, notice how the music syncs up to the car alarm. The song I'm a Man carries into the end credits.
Wait up a sec. I think we should talk.
No,
we haven't had a chance.
No, that's over too. You can tell that to the frogs.
Tell It to the Frogs is the episode where things slow down and we learn more about these characters through a ton of dialogue and not action. Rick reunites with his family, we as the viewers meet Daryl, and Lori lashes out on Shane, resulting in him beating up Ed. When it comes to the episode title, I think we all know that it's not really about the frogs. The episode title, Tell It to the Frogs, is about words going unheard or unaccepted throughout the entire episode. Merle talks to a hallucination on the roof, Ed tells Shane to mind his business about the log in the fire, Rick explains to Shane and Lori why he has to go back to Atlanta, Lori and Shane fight about Rick, and the women confront Ed. This episode is a character drama and barely has any zombies in it. It's a good reminder that the show isn't really about zombies and reveals that tempers may boil in the group that could be more intense than the zombies themselves. I like this episode, and I like that we get to learn more about everyone in it, and it's not action-packed like the previous two, but it doesn't have to be.
And then this idiot, he takes a swing, and, well. Oh, you should have seen the look on his face.
In the scene where Merle is on the roof by himself, he's totally lost it at this point. He starts talking to a hallucination, and in the background you hear an electric banjo just improvising, which makes it sound very conversational. But the thing is that conversation is only going one way. Like I said earlier, the episode Tell It to the Frogs represents a lot of words going unheard and unanswered. So just like the words going unanswered, the banjo is also going unanswered. There's no musical call in response to this. We've now reached the happiest moment in the score, which is when Rick reunites with his wife and son. It includes piano and acoustic guitar, and it's one of the most beautiful things that I've heard in the Walking Dead score. Another one-episode leitmotif occurs in episode 3, and it's most commonly referred to as the hand. There actually are a few variations of this theme. This time we hear a very ominous synth sound in the bass, while the piano plays the theme very gently, and it's very subtle, but it's kind of like a jack-in-the-box. It hides for a little while, and then later on it jumps right in your face. I think of it as like musical foreshadowing. It's like a warning. You hear it one time and it sounds ominous, like things are eventually going to go wrong, and then they eventually do. It plays over the scene where Shane is beating the crap out of Ed, and it carries into the next scene where the group goes to the rooftop, only to find that Merle's hand is cut off. The hand also carries through the end credits of the 3rd episode.
Vatos trickle in to check on the parents, the grandparents. They see how things are and most decide to stay. It's a good thing too, we need the muscle.
Vatos, which is the 4th episode of the show, introduces us to Guillermo's group as he and Rick's group have to confront them all spaghetti western style. We find out that the Vatos are actually taking care of the old people at a nursing home. The word Vatos, by the way, is Spanish for dude or man.
That's it! That's the bag! Vatos, take it!
New guy. You got us out.
New guy?
Yeah. Crazy Vato just got into town.
The Vatos group refer to the men as Vatos. This is the first time that the group has had a tension-filled encounter with another group, even though this was all just a misunderstanding. This also happens to be the same episode that the walkers attack the camp during the fish fry, killing both Amy and Ed. This episode is a big one and introduces the first major deaths of the show. Overall, this episode brings the price of living in this world, and is heartbreaking.
So we put together an ensemble made entirely of cello and one bass. We had no violins, we had no viola, for a really bottom-heavy, deep, dark, aggressive, big sound. This was something that I knew would come in handy for this episode, but I really didn't anticipate the challenges that would come up using an ensemble in this way, and especially getting them to play the music that I wrote for them. It was a little tricky to find the correct volumes to get the group to play at. When you have 5 cello is not the same thing as having 2 violins, a viola, and 2 cello.
If I actually could play the octave down, would that work for you?
Yeah.
That would be great for me.
The first cue that I wrote for this episode turned out to be probably the most insanely difficult piece of music I've ever written, ever. I set it in a meter that's kind of weird. Rather than being in 4/4 or 3/4, I decided to set it in 13/8. I'm kind of used to this, but a lot of people aren't. And so just right away, finding the groove, getting it to sit and feel right when it's in 13 and everybody's counting to 13 all the time, it took a minute just to get the groove to settle. The top upper voices had a little more vibrato.
Okay, well, we can do that. We can for sure try it.
And then, if that wasn't enough, I wrote a really difficult lead line for the first and second cello and made them count it out in 13. And it's this really aggressive, angular, dissonant line that has no repeating figures. It's just a really difficult thing to play and count. To make matters worse, we put the first and second cello on opposite sides of the room. So they're not even next to each other to listen to each other, so they each have to play it perfectly, not even really being able to hear each other. The first few takes through this piece, we were all getting a little nervous, but I knew that this would work out. I knew it was going to work because I had faith in these players that I've worked with so many times. And I also knew that once they got that 13/8 groove into their bloodstream, that they'd get it. And after a few times playing through it, they really did. And they played the hell out of it.
The next one-episode leitmotif is meant to represent the Vatos group in episode 4. It only plays once for literally a total of 7 minutes and 2 seconds during the episode, but it creates an atmosphere for when the group confronts Guillermo and his group.
It's true. He wants Miguelito's feet. It's pretty sick, man.
We were hoping more for a calm discussion.
That hillbilly jumps Felipe's little cousin, beats on him, threatens to cut off his feet. Felipe gets an arrow in the ass, and you want a calm discussion?
The scene where Amy and Ed die is one of the first traumatic scenes of the series, and as a result, the characters ultimately feel hopeless. They had a bad experience that was caused by zombies, and they're emotional about it, so naturally you'd connect the two groups of instruments into one blended bluegrass band mixed with a string orchestra.
Do not enter the city. It belongs to the dead now.
It's day 194 since Wildfire was declared, and 63 days since the disease abruptly went global.
Wildfire is the 5th episode and explores the aftermath of the walkers entering the camp. They believe that the camp is too dangerous, and Rick insists on moving to the CDC. They bury Amy and Ed, and Jim dies leaning against a tree. The episode ends with the introduction to Jenner, and he reveals that the zombie virus is referred to globally as the Wildfire virus. It's called the Wildfire virus because it spreads like a wildfire. We find out in episode 5 that 194 days have gone by since the virus was declared, and 63 days since the virus went global. This episode is important because we see characters cope with their losses for the first time. There were a few times where they decided to either use the temp score or just choose an instrumental piece. The first example is in the scene where the group leaves for the camp. The music for this scene, which was likely the temp score, was Sunshine by John Murphy from the Sunshine soundtrack. Overall, this piece is very cinematic and epic sounding and uses strings and synth sounds. It makes the group's experience feel like a cinematic journey. The second one's actually Beethoven, and it's the third movement of his Piano Sonata No. 8 titled Pathétique. It's a very catchy piece in C minor and plays when Jenner is working on the Test Subject 19 samples. Honestly, I think this piece is really just meant to make us think that Jenner is intelligent by putting fancy classical music in the background. It's a really cool style choice, but I do genuinely believe that that's the reason why the piece was used. The Walking Dead theme actually returns in the score once again as part of the end credits music, but it's not exactly the same as the main title. My interpretation of this is that they're scared to enter the CDC. They're scared to find out what people at the CDC know. We now know, of course, but as a first-time viewer, that anticipation beforehand is scary.
Here's your chance. Take it.
I'm grateful.
The day will come when you won't be. Give me playback of TS-19.
Playback of TS-19.
TS-19 is the season finale and is also the episode where the group enters the CDC. They learn some things about the virus from Jenner and are forced to leave before the facility explodes. This episode being called TS-19 really just means Test Subject 19.
This person died. Who?
Test subject 19.
The episode is centered around the CDC and Edwin Jenner, so it only makes sense that it's named after the person who drove him to make certain decisions in this episode. Although this is another slow episode compared to the previous ones, it's also an interesting one because it's very different than the rest of the show. It also brings a lot of rising tensions towards the end because you don't know if the group is going to make it out in time. In this episode, we have two major deaths being Jenner and Jackie, which take place during the explosion. I actually enjoyed this episode as the first season finale of The Walking Dead, and it brings us something unique that we don't really see again in this show. The next one is titled Relief, and it plays when everybody is taking hot showers again, and it kind of reminds me of the music where Rick reunites with his family. It's not a leitmotif, but the fact that there's a guitar strumming alongside a piano leads me to believe that these instruments are meant to represent the more lighthearted moments of the show. The music that plays during the Test Subject 19 playback is very atmospheric and feels like something of another story and doesn't really feel like The Walking Dead. Of course, technology is not something that many people have in their hands in the show, so it only makes sense that we hear a different sound over this scene.
Somewhere in all that organic wiring, all those ripples of light, is you. The thing that makes you unique and human.
The final instrumental piece that they licensed was Running to the Rain by Peter Gabriel from the Rabbit Proof Fence soundtrack. In the case of The Walking Dead, this plays twice in the episode. It plays the first time when the group finds out that the CDC building is about to self-destruct, and the second time as the group manages to escape the CDC building. It's another piece with a lot of strings and some taiko drums to make it feel very cinematic. It's more of an emotional tension builder of are they going to escape in time, and I think it does a really good job at making the scene more intense. The final song of the first season occurs in the final scene of the final episode, and that song is Bob Dylan's Tomorrow is a Long Time. This one has very relevant lyrics, and it suggests that time is an obstacle, and if it weren't so long, that loneliness wouldn't be a burden.
If today was not a crooked highway, if tonight was not a crooked trail, if tomorrow wasn't such a long time, then lonesome would mean nothing to you at all.
This whole season/chapter has been about the group making use of their time with their loved ones as the world is ending, but some of them are so lonely that they don't want any time in this world. Andrea doesn't have Amy, so it feels longer and more depressing for her. Jenner doesn't have his wife, so he takes his own life. Going into the second verse, I think it feels more focused on that loneliness, and it represents Jenner in this story.
Yes, and only if my own true love was waiting, and if I could only hear her heart softly pounding. Yes, and only if she was lying by me, and I'd lie in my bed once again.
Everything that Jenner was doing was about a promise that he made to his wife, whom the episode is literally named after. She was Test Subject 19, so it only makes sense that at the end of the episode that spiritually he was going to go back to her. Going into the chorus, it becomes more about this disconnection to the world, which makes sense for Jenner.
I can't see my reflection in the water. I can't speak the sounds to show no pain. I can't hear the echo of my footsteps or remember the sounds of my own name.
He's been trapped inside the CDC for so long, and it's been a while since he's had the chance to see the light of day or communicate with anybody. His suicide was his attempt to conquer time, but time really conquers him. This Bob Dylan song actually carries over into the credits as the end credits music of the episode.
If my own true love was waiting, and if I could only hear her heart softly pounding, yes, and only if she was lying by me,